Welcome back to Positive Connection Equine Training. Today we're going to focus on gaining confidence in the barn and with being stalled. So, when I first started working on getting comfortable in the stable and in the barn, I actually started from completely outside. So, Sadie had a bit of a scary experience at her previous barn with some pigs jumping up from the stall ladder, which I'm sure would be scary for all of us. So, that left her a little bit scared of the aisleways and the barn that we're at now, which is a new barn without pigs, is open on both ends. And so it's a little bit echoey and not necessarily the most inviting. When we do start out, we start with plenty of options, as you can see, for hay or grass that's outside of the barn, and we just work on spending time there. And really, that's just because that's where the edge of her comfort zone really was. So our goal was really getting them confident to be stalled, and we don't want them to be confident despite their fear, but to be able to have them comfortable with being stalled without that fear in general. Um, and so a lot of our focus is really on the emotions that are surrounding it and making sure that those new associations with the barn are positive and fun and supportive. And so here I'm really just looking for calmer body language and maybe offering some easy wins. So you can see me with a couple. I have a moving target, which is the whip with the pool noodle, and then the cone. And so she's able to kind of opt into doing some kind of work near the barn as well. That gives her easy wins for hay pellets and some form of continued reinforcement. Again, this kind of works with classical conditioning in order to make all of those experiences near the barn starting to be associated with more positive things than anything that could be scary or dark or threatening. I'll then do like little bits of exploration with added time in the stall. One note here is like if you notice that your horse is getting pushy around the stall or you feel like, ooh, I'm starting to have to correct or punish behavior, it's kind of a sign that you need to go back and review those stress signals. That you've probably gone too far and that you probably need to move a couple steps back into creating an environment where you can be kind of that quiet support system instead of being an additional adversary for them. So maybe that means they start to get really bugged out right before the stall. Okay, great. That's where we can start working, or maybe we can even take a step back. As Sadie started to get more confident, we then kind of moved on to facilitating more exploration. And so, what we're doing here is we're really tapping into what's called the seeking system the best that we can by using some forage-based foods. So this can look like, tossing some grain or some pellets or some hay sporadically on the ground in the barn aisle for them to kind of investigate, sniff out, and find. And that also helps, if you have, hay nets, anything great that continues to build all of these great interactions, kind of a surprise benefit for them. Like, oh my God, there's something really great here, can help increase those little dopamine spikes. And so they're like, oh, maybe the barn's a great place to be. Maybe it's really not that scary. And that's exactly what we're trying to aim for, right? We can also, if they're not super confident yet, which they won't be, if you have like a calm or confident horse that can be tied up in the barn or put in a stall that'll help give your horse more confidence, that's a great thing to do. You can also kind of set up the environment a little bit more for success. So maybe, if you have a barn similar to mine, you can close one door of the barn to make it a little less visually daunting. Maybe you can pick a time where there's not going to be a bunch of people in the barn. If you have a barn that echoes a lot, you can kind of find those quiet times. And that's not really to like avoid showing them these different stimuli, but so that we can kind of build up to it and minimize the things that we think are gonna be scary or overwhelming until they're gonna be confident enough to handle that. And that's really a key point here, right? If we just push them in all at once, they're not really learning how to handle all this, they're just coping with the stress. And that's really not gonna create confident horse, and that's not really accomplishing our goal of maintaining confidence and eliminating that fear of the barn or in the stall itself. Now, I recommend even if you don't use positive reinforcement regularly, to still maybe get one of those shallow feed pans. And what you can do is you can toss either hay pellets in there so that you don't have to feed them by hand, but you're still getting the benefits of kind of emphasizing that rest and digest over fight and flight. But also so that they can start to have those positive associations of like, oh, the barn means good things and I'm happy and everything's great here. Um, what you can also do is if you go to hang out with them close to their breakfast or their dinner time, you can bring their grain and feed them close to the barn wherever they're comfortable without being over threshold. And so you can really tell by looking for stress signals. So that might be, on their face, if they have whites of their eyes showing, if they have that triangulated or stressed eye, any tightness in their muzzle, tightness of neck muscles, kind of pronounced veins. We're seeing all of that. Those are all stress signals and tension. You can also see it if you see that they're snatching at their food more than normal or they're really grabbing for it. That's a good sign of anxiety as well. And so we want to be able to notice these signs in order to best determine, are we really in their comfort zone or are we actually pushing them farther than we realized? And so that's a really, really important thing because we want to be able to have them slightly outside of that comfort zone, right? So that they're continuing to grow, but not so far out of that comfort zone where that experience has now become negative and too much full of anxiety. This is also something that we continue to reevaluate in every stage. It's a constant meter on whether we're in a challenging but confidence building scenario or one where they're really just feeling too out of their depth to show improvement. We do want to know, you're just here to facilitate the process. So that means you're not doing a whole lot of asking them for things. You're not trying to coerce them into coming. You're not pushing them into doing anything crazy here. It's really just, I'm here to support and facilitate all of these good things happening for you. I also recommend a lunge line. So if they want to to offer close to the barn, you can kind of give them that space. My setup personally is great because I can safely let her around the outside of the barn or in the barn loose, so long as I know other people aren't in there currently with their horses. But I know not everyone's setup is the same and not everyone is able to do that safely. And so that's where that lunge line comes into handy. So you can really let them move a little bit more than they normally would with just a normal lead rope. Because if they're starting to get fidgety, if they're not able to stand still, that's probably also a good sign that they're a little overwhelmed, that they're not quite comfortable yet. And so that's just another thing. It's like that's fine. That's not misbehavior. It's just information that you're getting. They're saying, I am feeling way too overwhelmed to be able to learn and think right now. And so that's when they get pushy and that's when you feel like you have to do all those corrections. And so we want to be proactive instead and say, okay, totally fine. Not a big deal. We're going to take a couple step backs, give you some easy wins, and build that confidence again there. Because we do, want to continue to remember the goal isn't to be in a stall. The goal is to be genuinely okay and secure in a stall, which is a much harder ask compared to just popping them in and waiting until they start to internalize or escalate those stress behaviors. I do, kind of sporadic bits of exploration with now added time into the stall. So I make sure there's some good hay in the stall as an option and just start with, walking in and out, leaving the door open, not making it a big deal, and then escalating to staying in for longer periods. Again, we're going to watch the body language, see how strongly they're feeling. So if they're showing more and more obvious stress signals, you've probably gone too fast. You'll also see me in just a minute here, kind of demonstrating this treat and retreat plan, is what I call it, which is basically when she goes into the stall, she's comfortable enough being in there now. And I want to work on adding space and duration into that. And so basically, what I do is I give a reward and I use alfalfa pellets for this. And then I add a tiny bit of space and walk away. And then I come back. And again, you can do this like in a bucket or a feed pan. I actually tend to do this more. I just don't do it in the video, but that way they can kind of choose between grazing on their hay or they can even get the pellets. And so then they have all these great things in the stall. But it also shows like if they are nervous or they keep watching and sticking their head out, then I can kind of take that as information of like they're not 100% comfortable just hanging out in the stall, but they are okay to kind of be in there. Like there's outside the comfort zone, but not so far that they're over threshold. And so I can kind of use all that information, take that in, and kind of adjust my plan from there. Sometimes it is helpful to feed by hand just to determine how snatchy they're being, which again is another subtle sign of that anxiety, but it also kind of preps them for being confident even without support. And so eventually, I can hide, I can go anywhere, and she can be in the stall in the barn alone and be totally fine. Again, this might be something that you build up to. Maybe you have some friends at first and then slowly bring it into just alone time. It's also great if you're new to positive reinforcement or want to start positive reinforcement. You can work on learning default neutrals at this point with that protected contact of the stall. So that, kind of doubles and you actually do have a training session. But also, if they're still lower than threshold, you're also working on that classical conditioning to still make those experiences really positive. So it's almost like this two in one benefit there. Please support the channel with a like, comment, or subscribe. And if you found anything helpful in this video or have any questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to talk through if I have the time. If you have specific questions, a horse specifically that you're having issues with and you might want some help or advice from, or even just if you have your own tips and tricks and what works for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.